traveling rattlesnake charmer missed lunch, so he decides to make a quick snack stop. He sees an exit sign for a town where his good friend from high school lives, and it reminds him of a snack tradition they used to have. Every single day, they'd go get chips and salsa and water to wash it down. He doesn't know the area very well, so he looks up his old friend and sends her a quick message. Her name is Pam, and she responds very quickly. Pam sends the snake charmer the address to Larry's gas station and meets him there. The snake charmer asks Pam what she's been up to lately, and Pam tells the snake charmer that she's a professional hot dog eating contest champion with an undefeated record. The snake charmer asks Pam where she goes to participate in contests, and Pam replies that the general store right next to her house hosts most of the local contests. She laughs and says that she's at the general store so continuously that she's basically at home when she's there. Pam also tells the snake charmer that there's one specific contest that is out of state, and she'll never participate in it because it costs extra to enter the contest, and it's just a fad. Before they part, Pam tells the snake charmer that the true secret to winning is to always slip $20 to Rob, the judge, before the contest starts, so he can rig the results. So let's just unpack this a little bit. First, rattlesnake, right? That's the first thing that should jump out at you in this story. Rattlesnake, R and S, it stands for rules and statutes, and it refers to rules and statutes that can grant personal jurisdiction independent of the normal analysis. It's going to be probably rare on a fact pattern, maybe as rare as a rattlesnake charmer. So next we talk about tradition, the daily tradition of getting chips, salsa, and water. Tradition should kind of get you into the mode of thinking that we're going to talk about the traditional basis for personal jurisdiction. We'll start with letter D, okay? That's for daily. Daily stands for domicile. Domicile is kind of a fancy way of saying that's where you live. Not only where you live, but where you intend to remain. And now we talk about chips, salsa, and water. Chips, the C is going to be consent. C is consent. And this can be done, essentially by consenting in writing to personal jurisdiction. Next is salsa, right? Salsa is service, the S. And this can happen by being served in the forum state. So if you happen to be in the forum state and you get served there, that satisfies personal jurisdiction under one of the traditional bases. Next, we have water. Water, W, waiver. In this case, by answering pleadings without objecting to personal jurisdiction, then you'll actually waive your right to object to personal jurisdiction. So then that satisfies personal jurisdiction. Now we come to Pam. Okay, Pam is that friend, and she is going to help us finish out the traditional basis, and she's even going to help us transition into the next section. So let's start with the P in Pam. That's P for property, property ownership. That's one of the ways you can have a traditional basis for personal jurisdiction. Next, A. A is for agent, an agent in the forum state. If you have an agent in the forum state, you can be served through that agent even if you're not in the forum state, and that rounds out traditional bases. So we're actually going to use the end of Pam's name, which is the letter M, to transition us to the next thing that we need to check. So if we don't have traditional bases, we're going to look at minimum contacts. So minimum contacts is what the M comes from, M for minimum. Then we go right into talking about Pam wanting to meet us at Larry's gas station. So we have LGS. L is going to stand for the long arm statute. That allows a state to reach out and exercise jurisdiction over someone from another state not inconsistent with the Constitution. Next, we need to have sufficient contacts. So sufficient contacts we can get two different ways, and that's what the gas and the station are going to provide for us. We got the G and the S, right? So G is general, and what's cool is that even beyond getting that first prompt for gas and station, general and specific, we're actually going to get a little bit more help in the story because Pam actually talks about where she goes and does her hot dog eating contests, right? And so the rattlesnake charmer asks her, where do you usually go? And she says, I usually go to the general store, right? So that's general jurisdiction, coming back and helping you again. And she says she goes to contests at the general store, and she mentioned that she was so continuously there, right, that she's essentially at home. And that is the definition for general jurisdiction. It's when you look at the defendant and you say, you know what, you don't meet the traditional basis necessarily, but there's a long arm statute, and we can verify that your contacts here are so continuous and systematic that they render you essentially at home in the state. That gets you home with general jurisdiction. Next, she says there's a specific place that she does not go to, right? It's out of state. That should kind of clue you in there. But she won't go to it because it costs extra, right? That's CE, and that should remind you of the Calder effects test, and that's where causing harm from outside of the state creates specific jurisdiction. And if you know from your study, specific jurisdiction is providing jurisdiction only for that one specific issue, not broadly and generally the way general jurisdiction does. And then she said, not only does it cost extra, but it's just a fad, right? Fad, F-A-D. This is going to clue you into the rest of what you need for specific jurisdiction, because for the letter F, it needs to be foreseeable, that you could be hailed into court because you have purposefully, and here comes the A, availed yourself to the benefits of the forum state, or you have purposefully, here comes the D, directed activities at the forum state. That gets you home with specific jurisdiction. And then there's just one more thing in the story, and that's where Pam is going to talk about Rob. She says that the way to really win these contests is to pay off the judge, and Rob is the judge, R-O-B. That's going to give us the reasonableness element, and that is where granting jurisdiction over this defendant wouldn't, here comes the O, offend traditional notions of fair play and substantial justice. And you determine that by looking at the, here comes the B, burden on both parties, and also state versus federal, and then balancing those. So the B could be balance, it can be burden, whatever helps you remember it the most. And that is how one short story that lasts about 1 minute can help you get all the way through personal jurisdiction.